All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. How's it going, George?
On location.
George is
on location.
George on location, and Tom back at headquarters. Welcome to another week of adventure in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and this week was extremely adventurous. A bunch of things happened. Bitcoin struggling a little bit, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to look at the chart, and the Bitcoin miners, I'm just going to straight out say it. I think they've turned the corner. We're going to look at the charts of what they've done this week, this month, this year, and it's just they are clearly moving in the right direction. And you know, some are more frustrating than others, but you look at this board today, if you look, mostly green over here, and the ones that are red, none of them are down even 1%. So everything was either up or down less than 1%. Bitcoin itself was down 3.37%. So there was a couple of outliers that had great days. One of them for a specific reason. We'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get the rib.
Big day. Big day for Big George. If you can, if you would, if you will, please hit the thumbs up, smash the like button. We're at 14 likes. We need to get to 100. We got there last week. Get us there. I know people are, you know, you might be getting discouraged with, well, let's find out. Let's do a poll right away. Are we getting discouraged with Bitcoin already?
Can I do it? I can't do it. Damn it.
I'll throw one up.
Tom, I did a whole bunch. I did a whole bunch of polls, remember?
I know, but did you bring the list?
I did not bring the list.
Is any of it in your brain?
No, I'll think. It'll come to me in a second. But somebody did say that I thought there was going to be a pullback. I don't remember who that was, though. Do you remember that, Tom?
One of the members was talking.
No, it was me.
Oh,
I said it last Friday.
Well,
I said it again on Tuesday.
You've been consistent for this whole month that you felt there was going to be a pullback coming, but you did not believe we were going to go under 100,000.
I just don't believe they can do it, Tom.
But we are. I mean, we're getting a pullback. We've just crossed several lines of support today, so you know it could. I didn't think we were going to 100. George thought we were gonna 100 would hold, but he thought we would test it. And it's, you know what? If that's what happens, I bought some stuff today. I'll get to that and let you know what I bought. But all right, to me, all of this is just buying opportunity, and I think we're good. I'm gonna get to Midway. Longtime member, thank you, and thanks for the super chat. BitDeer quietly closed at a 5-week high on its weekly chart, despite Bitcoin doing worse than 7% last Friday. I like BitDeer's setup here a lot. So thanks, Midway, for bringing up BitDeer. I will tell you, Midway was my catalyst to go do my deeper due diligence on BitDeer, and I did buy it a month, maybe 5-6 weeks ago. And so it's been performing nicely, and I think it's only just begun. This, you know, none of this is financial advice. You guys need to do your own due diligence, but I think the setup is there. I got some charts open for BitDeer that we can look at on the stream today. So they got big plans. They're planning to get to, I believe, 40 exahash this year. So there's a lot of growth coming. Now it's going to be one of those situations where do they do what they said they were going to do? And if they do, I think we're looking at a lot of potential upside, but we will see. Thank you, Midway. Let me finish this poll.
Supposed to be a big weekend news, Tom.
Big weekend news?
A lot of things coming September 1st.
Uh-oh. I'm going to post the poll.
Sounds good. You're good.
All right, Bitcoin performance in September. August is basically over. Right, we get 30 and 31 over the weekend. So that's it. This was August. Now, Bitcoin obviously trades 24/7, so it will continue to go. But the Bitcoin miners, this was the month of August. And we're going to take a look at it. And I think you guys are going to be surprised. I think it's good stuff. We're at 20 likes. If you could help us, if you just got here or if you haven't done so, it does help a lot if you hit the like button, smash the like button, the thumbs up button. You can subscribe to the channel if you want. We're going for 100 likes. We're at 21. So help us. Help us. All right. Should we get to some news? There was the news of the day. Of course, the stock market did what it does and totally panicked for absolutely no reason. For those of you looking at Bitcoin and say, why did it have a bad day? Everything had a bad day, and it was, I'm going to go through it, and it's nonsense. It continues to be nonsense. If there's one thing I pound the table on, it's that these one data point deals, when the market loses its mind, they virtually always turn out to be really nice buying opportunities, right? Nothing's a guarantee, but I bought two things today, and I'm glad I did, and I feel
What'd you buy?
lucky to get. I bought some CleanSpark and some Marathon.
Wow.
And you know, I'm trying to pace myself. I wanted to buy everything today. This morning stuff was down. You know, a lot of these ended up very green, but you know, Marathon was way red. CleanSpark was way red this morning. So I bought in, and we'll see if I keep getting opportunities, then we'll keep buying in. So the choices on the poll are, in the month of September, is Bitcoin going to hit a new all-time high? 124,000 is our current all-time high. Is Bitcoin just going to go sideways? We're going to have a little month of consolidation, retest 100K. That's what George is thinking. Or are we actually going to go below 100K and fail the retest of 100K? So if we go to the 1 day, just to put that in perspective, it sounds like madness, but if we go down to $100,000 here, it's about a 19% pullback. So not even quite a 20% pullback. So a 20% pullback would be somewhere in the $98,600 range. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm going from the wrong number. Oh, so all right. So $99,999 is a 19.8% pullback. So 100,000, I'm calling it a 20% pullback. So, you know, we get those. We got 5 of those in 2024. That's not an unusual outcome for Bitcoin in the short term, even amid a bull market. And 2024 was a bull market for Bitcoin. It was back-to-back years, Bitcoin up over 100% on the year, and we still got 5 20% pullbacks, one of which turned into a 30% pullback. So, you know, none of these numbers are crazy talk. I tend to think, I'm going to look at an article, the volatility is being sucked out of Bitcoin, and it is due to, you know, mass adoption, and we're only at the very beginning of that. I've got a couple more articles talking about that as well. So I think the volatility, I don't think we're going to see these 30% pullbacks. I don't think we're going to see these crypto winners, but I've been fooled before, so I'm not going to be shocked, because, you know, Bitcoin has a pretty solid history of 20% and 30% pullbacks, even in a bull market. But if we're going to get the pullbacks, if we're going to get the volatility to the downside, then we're going to get the volatility to the upside as well, you would think. So let's get to, I want to get to what the actual numbers were that came out today that made the market panic. So you can see, first let me go to So you can see the S&P, this is the SPY, this is the S&P 500. Let's just zoom in a little bit here so we can do. Yesterday, this was an all-time high for the S&P 500 yesterday. So it's not like the market's struggling. However, today, you know, it looks like we're down. It ended up not even being 1%, about 0.7% on the S&P 500. So, but pretty much everything was red today, especially in the morning. Things recovered a little bit. We're going to talk about IREN. IREN was actually way higher than it is right now this morning. It still ended the day up 15%, but that was near its lows on the day. IREN reported earnings. People liked what they saw, and IREN is now the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap. This is the first time in history that is true. It's been almost 5 full years that Marathon's been the largest market cap Bitcoin miner. Marathon and Riot used to swap places for a couple of years before that. And, you know, for several years, it's just been Marathon. But IREN just leapfrogged both of them. And they are now the #1 market cap Bitcoin mining company. And we're going to look at their results and look at what they're set up to do next year. They made a lot of money. But, you know, we got to look at their formula, because all of these companies have different operating formulas. And IREN's is unique. But man, did they scale up. And man, their stock is on fire. When we look at the charts, you're going to see the week they've had, the month they've had, the year they've had this year. They're just absolutely on fire. I'll show you my trade that I made in the middle of, actually late April, out of Microstrategy into a few Bitcoin mining stocks, the biggest piece of which was IREN, and then Hive, and then a tiny little bit of Riot. And that trade has worked out incredibly, and all three of those are doing well. But what IREN is doing, we're going to look at the IREN chart later. It's out of this world right now. So you can vote on the poll if you are on a device where you can do so. Right now we have a new all-time high, in the lead by a lot, but we are all over the place, because if I add the two together, between the retest of 100,000 and failing the retest and going below 100,000, there's actually right now 40% that think that, and 39% that think we're going to hit a new all-time high. We got 20% that think we're going to go sideways. So this is an extremely, this is a very indecisive poll. And, you know, we've been getting a lot of 50-50 polls over the last several months. Just trying to read some of the comments here and see if I can catch up. Yeah, Alexander Hawk is saying they're the biggest miner and not even a peep about Bitcoin on their website. And it is interesting. He's talking about IREN. If you go to IREN's website, you wouldn't even know they mine Bitcoin. You have to go to their investor relations section and look into what they do. They present themselves to the world as a high-performance computing data center company. And they have done so from the beginning. Their CEO has said, you know, our expertise is in building data centers. That's how we're going to succeed as a company. And I was, admittedly, you know, a couple of years ago, I was very skeptical, but I am convinced. Sourmelon Gaming, thank you, longtime member, and thanks for the super chat. IREN will go to 100 plus market, Tom, and sell Bitfarms. You got to admit, Sourmelon Gaming, I'm doing pretty good on my Bitfarms. I know you're not a fan, and I know that their situation has changed dramatically, but I'm glad I held on and took the run. They've practically doubled. But are they IREN? No. And it's funny because For years, they were much bigger than IREN, and now it's not even close, and they will never catch up. They don't even have plans to catch up, so we know it's not going to happen. But I haven't sold it yet because I think there's a lot more room to the upside for all these. IREN to 100, Sour Mountain Gaming. I hope you're right. I held my stock. I had a stop loss in that I got pretty close to like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it didn't kick in. So I've held all of my shares of IREN, and you know, it's run what IREN was at $26 right now. It was at $9 last month. I like to show, I have these 3 in a row. If you can see where my cursor is. Riot's at $13.76. Cleanspark's at $9.47. IREN's at $26.48. And why do I lump those 3 together? There was a day about a month and a half ago when all 3 of these were exactly $9.00 at one point in the day. So these were all straight up $9 stocks. And this is what they've done in the short period of time since then. You know, not for IREN's unbelievable performance. Riot has been, you know, from 9 to almost 14 is a huge jump, but 9 to 26, I mean, it's crazy. But this goes to show, we talk about the volatility. That is a common theme here. But when these run, it's for real. So, you know, those of you who are thinking you're going to wait forever and it's never going to happen, there's several of these companies you're going to see are up, you know, thousands of % from their lows of the crypto winter. Those are big returns. And take a time out and ask you guys if you could please smash the like button. We're at 36 likes. We got to get to 100. People are scared about Bitcoin right now. People are scared about cryptocurrency. Everybody's scared because we got one piece of data that wasn't even bad. So let's go talk about the data of the day, because it really, I don't understand what people do. And it's not people, it's big money and it's manipulation. But if we look, so PCE, the personal consumption expense, this is the consumer. So we have CPI, we have PPI, we have PCE. This is the one they say the Fed favors, although it's certainly not the one that gets the most attention. CPI gets the most attention by a mile. So here's what happened. The consensus coming into today was we thought it was going to be 2.6% this month. The previous month, it was 2.6%. So what did the actual come in today? 2.6%. Result, pure panic. The sky is falling, right? Bitcoin, if you look at Bitcoin's opening candle, like this is the opening candle for Bitcoin. Like as soon as the market opened, boom, the selling was on and it never really recovered. It's at its lows right now as we speak. So this is all irrational. This data is not, I'm just going to give you my opinion and then we'll do a quick poll on it. There's nothing concerning here at all in the least. In fact, I mean, if you look at the 1 year chart, you'll see this month doesn't stand out. There's nothing unusual. We have months that were worse than this. We have months that were the same as this. And if I go to the 3 year, I'm going to go to the 5 year because this really illustrates it, right? We're at 2.6 right now. We were at 7.25. That's almost triple what we are now. That's when this was a problem. This is not a problem. Yes, the Fed has a target rate of 2% for this, but the historical average on this is way above 2%, and it's way above 2.6%. So all of this fear-mongering about inflation, I'm still saying I will believe it when I see it. We're at historically lower than average inflation numbers by any measure. We're significantly off of our extreme inflation that we went through a few years ago. That is clearly gone in the rearview mirror. And this number was, there was nothing special here at all. They didn't like, let's see if they talk about core. The core inflation, which strips out food and gas, which makes no sense to me because really that's the only thing any of us care about. So why they would take those out? The core inflation was even higher. But that's actually good news because that means that our food and gas was even cheaper. So there was less inflation on food and gas than on everything else. So this was a non-event for me. And if you look, higher core inflation reading, unlikely to knock the Fed off course for the rate cuts in September. So this is a shift. We are now pricing in a rate cut in September of 25 basis points. And I'm going to go to the CME Fed Futures Watch tool and show you the market has not changed its mind at all. While everything looked like a panic and things were tanking, this was going on. The September meeting, which is September 17th, we remain at approximately 87% chance of getting a rate cut. 86.9% today. So that's with this new news baked in that everybody pressed the panic button on. We went from 86.7% yesterday to 86.9% today. Virtually unchanged, and it's even up a little bit. So this changed nothing. And that is why I waited patiently all week, and I feel like I got my buying opportunity today. I feel really good about it. You know, you never know what comes immediately following. There may be more buying opportunities to come, and to whatever extent possible, I'll just participate in those and do it again. That's me. But you can see if we look at our poll, we got new Bitcoin in the month of September. So in the next month for the Bitcoin miners, this was the end of the month. Obviously, we still got 2 days left in the month for Bitcoin. New all-time high, 40%. Sideways, 17%. Retest 100,000, 19%. Go below 100,000, 24%. So 43% think we're going to go to 100,000 or less. 40% think we're going to get a new all-time high. So this is a very, very, as usual, a very, very split poll. And I think this just goes to the fact that everybody remains, for as long as the narrative is going to be confusion and mass confusion, which is what that is what the market is doing. It's what the news is doing. It's what big money is doing, and they're keeping everybody scared. And you know, that's usually a pretty dangerous way to invest. That's what I will say about that. I'll end this poll. We were kind of indecisive. So let's see the big question in September, because here's the flip side of the deal. If we don't get a rate cut September 17th, I believe we will go into a bear market. I'm not going to say a market crash, but I think we will have a full-blown bear market if we don't get a rate cut, because the expectations have been sustained at a very high probability of a rate cut. The inflation data just came out. It came out as expected. We're going to get a couple more inflation numbers and job numbers between now and then, but they've waited all year. If they don't do this in September, I will be worried. So with that said, I'm going to do the next poll. Okay, here we go. On my end, it says it's still loading. All right, hopefully that shows up for you guys. I don't know what's happening. My thing shows that it's still loading and it hasn't loaded yet. All right, I'm going to go on and let it do its thing. Drop in the comments if you guys are not hearing me or not seeing me because my screen is acting funny. And while you're at it, you can smash the like button. We're at 46 likes now. We're starting to make a little progress. Do us a favor. Help us out. Get us to 100 likes while we're live. That is our goal. We've had 3 times now in the last 4 years where we've missed that goal, and they've all been in the last several months because people seem to be very disillusioned with the Bitcoin miners. But I'm going to move to the Bitcoin miner news next because a bunch of Bitcoin miners did have some news this week. And then I want to show you guys what the Bitcoin miners did this week because the performance this week was very good. And so I think we've turned the corner. I think there's good times ahead for the Bitcoin miners, but obviously you guys got to do your own due diligence and invest carefully. So let's take a look at some of the news. I'm going to start with the one that went ballistic today. And let me go to the chart before I even go to the news. This is IREN. So I just want to let everybody know, and for the members, you are aware of this. On this day right here, we had our members only live stream. And I said on that stream, I think the next stop for IREN is we're going to test this line right here at $28.25. Now, this was at $22.50. That was pretty far away at that point. Well, it only took 2 days to get and test this line. Now, I think this will present a little resistance for a while, and I believe we'll break through this and keep running because there's, oh, sorry. Get off of that. That is actually, that is actually literally the all-time high. This is the only Bitcoin miner that is anywhere near its all-time high. Most of them are, 50, 60, 70% away from their all-time high. IREN at one point today was above its all-time high. Now it pulled back. This candle looks awful, but remember, look at this gap here, right? This was a huge up day. IREN was up 15% today, but the reality was at one point, it was up almost 26% today. So, then everybody freaked out in the market and it pulled back a little, but that's still an extremely strong day.
I bet you're glad you didn't sell, Tom.
Yeah, there was a couple of times where it got in the neighborhood and I didn't do it.
All right, how do you feel about it now? I mean, now that's close to the top.
I feel like, great question. Let's go to this because I have an article that will answer that question. Let me just find it. Okay, Bitcoin miner IREN's AI push gains momentum. Price target hiked 60% to $37. So we had an analyst come out today and bump their price target, I believe, from $24 up to $37. We just had Sour Melon Gaming say he thinks it's going to 100. So I'm sometimes you have to just go with the momentum. And it's tricky. You gotta, if for those of you taking profits along the way, there's some wisdom to that. If you're buy and hold long term, this is now the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap. It's shocking to me. They went from a $200 million market cap to a $6.5 billion market cap in 2 years.
Are they bigger than Marathon now, Tom?
Yeah. Today, they passed Marathon. They are now the largest market cap Bitcoin miner.
Do you think these other guys look at this and just wonder and are pissed?
I think yes, I think they're frustrated, but to a certain extent, I do think this is a tell on what's coming for the rest of the Bitcoin miners, especially those involved in high performance computing. And I'm going to show you exactly what IREN is doing, because for as much as they downplay, one of the members pointed out that they don't even mention Bitcoin mining on their website, which is true. And that is because really they're people they're marketing to, their customers are people who need infrastructure for high performance computing machines. So that is 100% how they market themselves. The fact that behind the scenes in July, they mined more Bitcoin than any other Bitcoin miner. They're at 50 exahash, and they have put an absolute indefinite halt on growing their Bitcoin mining part of their company. But they're already at 50 exahash. I'm going to go to that right now. Let me see if I can find that slide. So they're at 50 exahash of installed mining capacity. All right. This generates $1 billion of annualized revenue. So their Bitcoin mining, they're on pace to have $1 billion of revenue. If you look at their AI portion of their business, they're targeting $200 to $250 million of annualized revenue in 2025. So their Bitcoin mining will still be 4 or 5 times the amount of revenue, but I suspect what you're going to see, the profit margins are so different that these two might contribute fairly similar actual gross profit in real dollars. So, but this is a company that has successfully diversified, right? And they've had a slew of news come out.
Is this the CEO? Is this Prager?
There's a lot of things
No, that's Wolf.
Oh, that's Wolf. Okay. Who's the CEO?
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I can tell you he's been talking data centers for 2.5 years, and I will admit, I was not on board. I was laughing at him when he was talking about, we're not a Bitcoin. 2 years, put yourself 2 years ago, he was saying, we don't even consider ourselves a Bitcoin mining company. We are a data center company. So while I was laughing at that, he was actually very forward thinking, because what has come over those last 2 years has proven out to be exactly what he anticipated. And that is why they market themselves as a data center company and not a Bitcoin mining company. And that's why they are now, 30, 40, 50 times bigger than they were 2 years ago? I mean, it's crazy. Let me see if I can get my chat is broken. I can't see what people are saying. I try and close out and go back in, but that could be a big mistake. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it. That's an error in judgment. Let's see. Actually, I have another way to read this. I'm going to switch my screen. Sorry, I can do this a different way. Okay, Midway. So sorry, Midway, I did not see your super chat. Cantor Fitzgerald also just increased their IREN price target to 41. The analysts think their AI revenue next year will be extremely strong. So you've got a 37 price target, a $41 price target. Remember, this was a $9 stock less than 2 months ago. $9. People are talking about the high 30s and the low 40s. And I don't think these are crazy numbers. I think it's going to get there. I mean, This stock,
Hot water.
they're leading and they're on fire. And I do think there will be a lot of other companies that haven't had their turn yet. So I'm not saying every single Bitcoin mining stock is going to behave the same and they're all going to catch up to IREN. But I do think this will go in phases. Money will rotate. And right now, that's why I bought Marathon and CleanSpark. Those two are clearly lagging behind. CleanSpark's market cap hasn't gone up in a year. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
All right.
EV money's coming in. Did you hear me?
Oh, the EV money. Yeah,
Yeah,
I noticed.
I told you.
Somebody, I think Lucid went under $2 today.
No,
So money's
put a fork in them.
running away from there. Yeah, both Lucid. I looked
Rivian's
at.
got to pray that a Democrat gets back in.
What shocked me was Rivian's down about 90% off of its highs, and Lucid's down about 95 or 96%. It's actually doing even worse than Rivian, even though Rivian financially, I don't understand what either of their business models is. We called that from the beginning, and those stocks have done nothing but go in the wrong direction at light speed. Old Jock, thank you for the super chat. And thanks for being a member. Old Jack said, has IREN formed a cup won the 5-year chart and just needed to form a handle before pushing up to the 50-ish level? Asking for a friend. You know, I was looking at this cup and handle. Right now, everybody out, and I'll get back to, thank you, Old Jock, for the comment. Right now, the talk of the town is that XRP is in the middle of forming a cup and handle pattern with a price target anywhere from $5 to $13 being the result of that cup and handle. So, and a cup and handle can be dramatic depending on its. So, you know, you look for these things, and if you look at them, I just feel like it's like looking at a cloud. It's like you can see whatever you want. So, but yes, I mean, I think I haven't sold a share. That's, you know, if that tells you where I think it's going. We're at 57. Let's go, George. We need likes. Need them. So let's see. Let's just finish up our IREN portion of the program. So Bitcoin miner IREN's AI push gains momentum. Price target hike 60%. We looked at that. IREN posts IREN posts first full year profit on AI cloud growth, mining expansion, and shares climb. Stock rose 13% in pre-market. I showed you they were up as much as 26% this morning before things cooled off a little bit. And I think I'm going to go back to the chart, because usually when you see this happen, this is basically foreshadowing, right? This is their all-time high. So yes, that presented some resistance today. I get it. But I think we're going to push against that, push past it, and I think we're going, hard as it is to believe. And look, I mean, let's look at this. If you look at this chart, this is what I'm saying. If you go back to April, well, you don't even have to go back to April. Go back to the middle of June. This was trading at $8.41 on June 2nd. It's up 215% since then. It's up since April. As of the close today, it's up 407% since April. It's only August right now. I mean, this is what I'm saying. That's a 5x. That's up over 400%. By the way, in the middle of the day, it was up 465%. you could see this up 500 or 600% by the end of September. And that's just from the middle of April. That's not from their lows in the crypto winter. They're up like 20,000% or something like that. We'll take a look at that later and see exactly what that number is. But this is the poster child. This is by far the first place Bitcoin miner in the year 2025 as far as stock performance goes. And as far as Bitcoin mining performance goes, without the most exahash, they did just mine more Bitcoin than Marathon, which nobody has done in years. And I don't expect that that trend will continue, but we'll see. Maybe it will, because you've got Marathon that's continuing to grow their exahash. They're targeting 75 exahash by the end of the year. You've got CleanSpark that's continuing to grow their exahash. They're targeting 60 exahash or more by the end of the year. But those three companies, Marathon, CleanSpark, and IREN, in exahash are just so far ahead of everybody else. There's only one other company in play, and let's see, who was it? Mentioned it earlier. Midway. No, I got to go further back. Yeah, it was Midway. Midway talked about BitDR, which is targeting 40 exahash by the end of the year. So that will put them in the conversation. If they can accomplish that, that's going to put them in the conversation. And that will be impressive. So extremely impressed. Congratulations to anybody who holds IREN, and there's several other big winners, but I want to go through the news and then we'll look through what these companies did this week, because this was actually, for Bitcoin, a bad week, and for the Bitcoin miners, this was actually somewhere between a good week and a great week, and we haven't had that in a long time. So that's why I'm saying the trend is turning in a noticeable, marked way at this point. Okay, so Hut 8 had some big news, and they've got some more coming. Hut 8 announces, and this was, what, a couple days ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Hut 8 announces plans to develop 4 new sites with more than 1.5 gigawatts of total capacity. And that is going to put, that's their new sites. If I scroll down, you'll see that will put them at 2.5 gigawatts of capacity under management across 19 sites. People like this. They liked this announcement. I'm going to continue on because there was a bunch of other. So this article, Hut 8 maps path to monetization of energy assets as Bitcoin mining carve-out nears. So remember, we've been talking about, this isn't going to be a Bitcoin mining company anymore. And I'm going to get to that next. They're done. They are now a high-performance computing energy data center company, period. Now, they are a major shareholder. They hold 80% of the stock in a company that's about to merge with Griffin and go public. And so let's just look at that, because this is a piece of their puzzle. So this says Trump-backed Bitcoin miner American Bitcoin targets September for its NASDAQ debut. The miner's 80% owned by Hut 8. So, you know, they no longer mine Bitcoin. Hut 8 themselves mines 0 Bitcoin. They own 0 Bitcoin, but they do own 80% of a company that's only Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, which is going to be American Bitcoin, the other 20% of which is held by Donald Jr. and Eric Trump. So we'll see, you know, if that political affiliation plays into the performance of that stock. But they intend to hit the ground running. And remember, they have over 10,000 Bitcoin mining, or Bitcoin in hodl here. So this is going to happen maybe next week. So this is imminent. We've been asking, when's this happening? When's this happening? And it could be next week. American Bitcoin recently raised $220 million to expand its Bitcoin holdings and infrastructure. So this company, whereas Hut 8 is all out on Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, this new company, which we're going to have to add to our list, which is good because companies have been dropping off of our list like flies lately. So it'll be nice to add one back in, but simultaneously, I don't know. We'll have to decide. We'll let you guys decide. Do we want to leave? Do we want to leave Hut 8 on the list, even though really technically they're not mining Bitcoin anymore? I'm going to close this and see if I can figure out. I'm going to just take 20 seconds and just, actually, I'll do that later. Looks like now is not a good time for that. So let's keep going. So two things are happening simultaneously. There's going to be a new player in town, and they're not going to be small. These guys are looking to size up, I think, to 20 or 25 exahash. So they plan to be, they plan to have staying power. They're not really doing an IPO. They are merging with Griffin, which is basically a defunct Bitcoin miner that's worth, next to nothing. So they're using that merger as a vehicle to go public. They will change their name from Griffin to American Bitcoin, and Hut 8 will be out of the Bitcoin mining business, although they'll be a major shareholder in American Bitcoin, which is in the Bitcoin mining business. So that's what's going. And so you can see Hut 8 has shifted. They'll now be at 2.5 gigawatts, and that seems to be the number that a lot of these big companies are trying to gear up to, that are considering themselves energy companies, high performance computing companies. They're looking to get somewhere around 2.5 gigawatts. And then, obviously they'll continue to probably try to grow from there. And it would appear that there is appetite for this stuff. So that was the gigantic question that I was having all along. It's great that they're building all this infrastructure, but is there any appetite for it in the market? Because, it's all about revenue. And if they're not going to get the revenue, then they can build as much as they want. It doesn't matter. Sorry, I'm trying to fix my chat in the background. Give me a second. And I give up. Sometimes that's because I'm doing the wrong thing. One more try, and I'll be back. All right, now I give up. Okay. So that's Hut 8. Hive. So for those of you who have been following the channel, I've been pounding the table that Hive's been undervalued. It's been left behind. It's been forgotten about. It is so, from a performance standpoint, from the lows of the crypto winter, it is so far behind in stock performance all of the other Bitcoin miners. It's ridiculous. So now there were reasons for that. So, everything isn't in a vacuum. They were not expanding their Bitcoin mining. If you remember, they got caught off guard a couple of years ago when Ethereum went to proof of stake. This was a company that mined Bitcoin and they mined Ethereum. They had a lot of machines mining Ethereum, and they were counting on the fact that that proof of stake switch was going to be delayed, indefinitely. Well, it wasn't. They had to switch gears in a major way, but they have done so. They put out this on August 24th, so early this week. Hive Digital Technologies crosses 16 exahash. So they were at 6 exahash coming into this year. And they're on their way. If we take a look, they're looking to get, so they came into the year, this chart used to say we're at 6 where we're looking to go to 25. Well, that sounded like crazy talk. But this doesn't look as crazy anymore because 6 has turned into 15. By the way, we just saw an article that 15 has now turned into 16 exahash, and they're looking to get to 25 exahash by November, which means the vast majority of their fleet is going to be brand new, latest and greatest machines. So they're going to greatly increase their efficiency. That should help on a cost per coin basis. They've already more than doubled the amount of Bitcoin they're mining per month just over the last 3 months. And, you know, they could easily double that again. So I think good things happening at Hive. And, you know, I think this was a very good announcement. And I think we're going to get 1 exahash at a time. They're going to keep letting us know because they did a press release, I think, at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and now 16. So I think they'll just keep doing this, keep investors in the loop. And I think it's positively affecting their stock. They were one of the great performers the last couple of weeks. So that's having an impact. So let's go look at how these things did perform. All right. And before we get into it, if you guys can smash the like button, we're at 67 likes. We're looking to get to 100 likes. I think I might have lost George. Let's see if he can get back. So do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button. Let's get us to 100 likes. Let's see. I'm trying to use the... Oh, there we go. Wayward, thanks for being a member. Wayward is saying American Bitcoin will be for day traders. So I think that's predicting a lot of volatility in the early days. And I think that's true. I think, you know, as a lot of these, this isn't an IPO and it's not a SPAC. It's a kind of a reverse merger, if you will. So this is their way to become a publicly traded company. And yeah, it's going to take a while to find its footing. I'm staying clear of it. I feel good about all my positions. I'm not willing to transfer out of any of the positions that I have to get involved in speculation on a new one that I don't know anything about. And Gary is saying IREN is up 26x. So that's from the bottom of the crypto winter, which was in, you know, November, December of 2022. So 26x. There's very few places in this market where you can 5x your money. Never mind 10, 15, 20. They're now 26x, and it would appear they're going to keep running. They could be a 30 or 40 or 50x. I mean, those are outliers. They're very hard to find. So that's why, you know, I have been unbelievably patient. I know a lot of the subscribers, particularly our members, I know have had to exert extreme patience in waiting for this to come at us. But I do believe it is clear that right now it's coming. And I'm going to show you, we're on this week. So let's talk about what happened this week. Bitcoin had one of the worst weeks it's had all year. A 7% pullback. So in a week where Bitcoin was down 7%, the first thing I'll say is every single Bitcoin miner beat Bitcoin. Not only did they just beat Bitcoin, but on a big pullback from Bitcoin, IREN was up 24%. Now, most of that was today, but they're not alone. Bitcoin down 7%, CIFR up 20%. Bitcoin down 7%, Hive up 17%. So this is what I'm talking about with Hive. I think you're going to see them continue to run. Bitcoin down 7%, HUT up 14%, BitDR up 7%, Core Scientific up 6%, Bitfarms up 6%, Riot up 4, and I'm going to change this because it's actually green. Terowolf was up 1%. The only things that were down on the week, and I hold both of these stocks, Marathon and Cleanspark. And guess what? If you weren't here earlier, I told you the 2 stocks that I bought this week were Marathon and Cleanspark, because there's no reason for them to be lagging behind. You know, they do have a big hodl position, but here's the thing. Marathon did not get a giant run up because of its hodl position. And Cleanspark did not get a giant run up because of its hodl position when Bitcoin was at its all-time high. So they don't deserve to get a pullback because Bitcoin is pulling back. There's a misalignment right now. Both of these companies effectively are being Marathon's literally being valued at 0 outside of the Bitcoin that it holds. Cleanspark's being valued at next to nothing. Yet you've got IREN at like a 50 PE right now. You don't have another one of these at even a 1 PE. So that's the discrepancy, and that's the potential left in these. Now, I'm not saying these are all going to be 50 PEs, you know, over the next 12 months. Some of these are going to win. Some of these are going to lose. Some of these are going to go sideways. But I think there's a lot of opportunity on the board you're looking at right now. I think there's an awful lot of opportunity. So this is just this week. This is the final week of August. So we finished August very strong. So let's go take a look. So this August chart, this is a done deal. Here's August. In the month of August, Bitcoin down 4%. 10 of the 11 Bitcoin miners beat Bitcoin in the month of August. And we're going to go through it because they didn't just beat Bitcoin, they destroyed it. The outlier, Cleanspark, down 17%. Cleanspark has been down because they have been, and again, this is just my personal opinion, but they made it crystal clear to the market that they are a pure play Bitcoin mining company and they will only focus on Bitcoin mining. Well, I will tell you, in the month of August, they fired their CEO, Zach. And Matt, who's been there all along, I think he was the chairman of the board. He was on the board. I think he was the chairman of the board. He's now the CEO. So they, you know, they've been steering the ship together. I think they had a difference of opinion because immediately, I'm going to go to a quote, and they haven't driven this home yet, but they are shifting. They're the last ones. Everybody else shifted gears, and look how well they're doing. So I'll get back to this chart in a minute. I want to show you an excerpt from, let's see, is this the article it's from? Where'd it go? Well, I copied it. Thankfully, I've lost the article, but I copied it anyway. This article came out 2 days ago. The protocol, Bitcoin mining faces new challenges as power costs eat profits. But you will see in here, there's a quote from Matt Schultz, the new CEO of Cleanspark. The 4-year cycle is effectively broken with the maturation of Bitcoin as a strategic asset with the ETFs and now the strategic treasury and whatnot, Schultz said. The adoption is driving demand. If you read anything about the most recent ETFs, they've consumed infinitely more, and that's obviously hyperbole, it's not infinitely more. Bitcoin then has been generated, but it's radically more Bitcoin than what has been generated so far this year. Cleanspark, which now operates 800 megawatts of energy infrastructure and has another 1.2 gigawatts in development, so there's your 2 gigawatts that they're shooting for, has begun turning its attention beyond proof of work. Quote, our speed to market with the electricity has created opportunities such that now we can look at ways to monetize power beyond Bitcoin mining. So that is a stark, not confusing in any way statement that they are shifting into high performance computing, like every single one of the other Bitcoin miners already has. They're the last one to do it. So while they're behind, I think this shift is important. It hasn't gotten priced in yet. They're going to have to do more than just, a few statements here and there. We're going to need to see a plan. They probably need to hire a consulting firm to help them build this out and go get business. And when we start seeing those press releases, I think you're going to start to see, because CleanSpark operationally, in my opinion, they're one of the highest level operators in this space. Their performance, they've been the number 2 in amount of Bitcoin mined almost every single month for the last year. They are number 2 in the amount of exahash they have. They're number 2 in the efficiency of their Bitcoin mining fleet. So this is a company that operates very well, but it's gotten left behind because the perception is they don't want any part of high performance computing. And that perception was not assumed. They've been screaming it at the top of their lungs for the last year. We're not going to have anything to do with high performance computing. We are a pure play Bitcoin miner, and that strategy did not pay off. In fact, I think it's the reason that they're still a $9 stock and IREN's a $26 stock. So, but I think you're going to see this shift. So that's why, to me, again, not financial advice. You guys got to do your own thing, do your own due diligence, because this stock has lingered. But I think it's going to take its run from 9 to much higher numbers. I would expect a double in a reasonable period of time and then keep running from there. That's my opinion on CleanSpark. So if we go back, let's go back to where we started. So you can see, did CleanSpark suffer from being the only Bitcoin miner not in high performance computing? Yes. They're down 17% in August. Everybody else had anywhere from an okay month to an outstanding month. Bitcoin down 4% on the month. So a little bit, not the greatest month for Bitcoin. Marathon down 1%, basically break even. Terowolf up 83%. Why was Terowolf up 83% in 1 month? Because they got a multi-billion-dollar contract for high-performance computing. Terowolf has given up on Bitcoin mining. And that doesn't mean they're not doing any, but I'm going to show you their latest investor presentation. Right here, you'll see it says targeting 225 megawatts and 12 exahash of Bitcoin mining for Q4 of 2025. Well, that's where they already are, which means they plan on no more growth the rest of the year. They've stated they've reallocated the majority of their capacity to data centers. And on top of that, they then just got a big contract. Now, be careful of the multi-billion-dollar contracts, because, this gets into the multi-billion dollars because it's a 10-year contract with 2 5-year options to extend. That's 20 years worth of revenue. So, it's not multi-billions per year, but I think it is going to average $300 million of revenue per year, which is more than their Bitcoin mining revenue, and it's at a much higher gross profit percentage. So Terowolf is a company that I had been saying they're in a spot right now. They've let the market know they don't do monthly operational reports. They've let the market know our Bitcoin, we're not closing it down, but that's not who we are anymore. That's not our future. Our future is in high performance computing and data centers. And I have been saying the companies that have made that shift are really going to have to wait for contracts to come in. But when they come in, watch out. And sure enough, they got a big contract this month. And what do we have? An 83% pop in their stock in 1 month. So again, this is the kind of volatility you can get if you're willing to hang around and wait in this space. It's all about patience, and there's never any guarantees. But we've seen a lot of these already playing out this way. We're at 76 likes. We need help. We need help. If you just got here, if you have not hit the like button, we're trying to get to 100 likes while we're live. Do us a favor, help us out. It helps the stream in real time. It makes a big difference. Let's keep going. So Terowolf up 83%, IREN up 64%. 15% of that was today, but IREN just continues to surge. They got to 50 exahash. That's tied for the second biggest fleet out of all the Bitcoin miners. In the month of July, which is the last month reported, they mined more Bitcoin than any other Bitcoin mining company, including Marathon. And today, with today's price action, they now have the largest market cap of any Bitcoin mining company. So IREN has turned into a leader in this space. They are also in first place as far as the efficiency of their fleet at 15 joules per terahash. That's first place among all Bitcoin miners. CleanSpark's in a very close second. There's a few others that I expect are going to be extremely competitive with that within the next 6 months. But, you know, IREN's leading the way, and IREN is selling 100% of their Bitcoin, paying for operations and for growing out their high-performance computing infrastructure. So that's the IREN strategy, and the market seems to like it a lot. They did, just so we can quickly revisit this, they did put out their financial statements yesterday. Q4 revenue, $187 million. Net income, $176 million. Adjusted EBITDA, $121 million. And EBITDA of $241 million. Approaching $1.25 billion total annualized revenue, with scope for further growth ahead. So these revenue numbers are just enormous compared to what these companies used to do in the last cycle when they were at their all-time highs, right? They're dramatically higher. And you'll see this company was, I mean, it was just straight up net income. So for the year, this was the end of their fiscal year as well. Total revenue increased to $510 million. So that's a 168% increase. So in 2023, or sorry, the fiscal year ended 2024, they had $187 million of total revenue for the year. By the way, that's the same number that they just had for this quarter. They had $501 million revenue for the year last year. They're projecting $1.2 billion for the year next year. You don't get this kind of growth. This is crazy growth. So there's a reason they're being priced at such a high PE, and people like this company, which has turned, it's cash flow positive, it's profitable, and its stock is showing it. I mean, this stock is dominating. CIFR up 40% on the month, and I will tell you, they had some good results. They're getting heavily involved in AI. They had some price target adjustments upward as well, and they just performed well all month. I mean, up Bitcoin down 4%, CIFR up 40%. And then next is Hive. So this is what I've been waiting for a long time. This is the first month, or we'll take a look at last month. Well, let's go take a look at it right now. So last month, Hive was up 19%. That was tied for second place out of all Bitcoin miners. Bitfarms was up 50%. This month, Hive's up 38%. So that's back-to-back months, up 19%, up 38%. It feels to me like the market is finally starting to believe. They had no credibility. They didn't have a clear business plan, and they had lost credibility. But by giving these updates, intra-monthly updates, every time they reach a new exahash milestone, they're building more and more credibility with investors, And investors are clearly pouring into Hive because the last 2 months have been their best 2 months by far in years. So Hive doing well, HUT up 26%. And remember, Bitcoin was down in August. You know, we've had months where Bitcoin was down 4% and the Bitcoin miners were down 40%. We're living the opposite world right now. We're getting momentum in our favor, in our direction. So for all the pain and suffering, and I'm going to go back. Well, we'll look at the year to date first, and then we'll go back in time. So you can see even BitDR up 11%. That's a great month versus down 4% for Bitcoin. Bitfarms up 6%, Core up 6%, Riot up 3%. Marathon was down 1%, and Cleanspark was the big outlier, down 17%. And I really do think that has everything to do with the fact that they've gone out of their way to disassociate themselves from high performance computing. And you can see from the article that we just read, Matt is now out there letting people know, hey, that has changed. We're getting into this game, and they got to roll out a serious plan. And I think that their stock is going to get a big, big bump from that. And it's not getting its due. The Bitcoin mining portion of these companies is not getting any of its due at all yet. So that part of the run is coming as well. And I feel like that will happen as Bitcoin continues to run, which I think it will. I do not think that the Bitcoin bull market is over. I think there's a long way to go. In fact, if we look, where was that? Bitcoin headed to 190K. So this article came out today. Tiger's model pegs a base price of 135,000, then layers on multipliers for fundamentals and macro conditions to reach 190,000 forecast. That's this year. So Tiger Research predicts Bitcoin could reach 190,000 by Q3, driven by global liquidity, ETF demand, and new 401k access. Remember, in the US, 401ks now have access to cryptocurrency. So that's a big change. And it's just one piece of the many, many pieces of adoption that we continue to get every single week. The report highlights a potential $90 billion demand from 401k allocations and significant institutional accumulation. So the sky is the limit here. It's all about the time frame. And that's why I have been arguing that we are going to have an extended period. This Bitcoin bull run is going to go way beyond the normal cycle, in my opinion, a year or maybe years beyond. Now, again, remember, that doesn't mean there won't be 20 or 25% pullbacks in the middle, but that's more of a normal behavior out of a market than, you know, these 80% pullback crypto winters. It's my opinion that those days are gone. That doesn't mean that cryptocurrency is immune to a bear market. It also doesn't mean those days are gone for the altcoins, because I think altcoin season could be vicious. It could run up huge and then it could run down just as fast. But for Bitcoin, I think it's in a different category altogether. Remember, Bitcoin still makes up more than 50% of the entire cryptocurrency universe, including stablecoins, which now make up a massive portion of the cryptocurrency universe. And speaking of which, this was an article from earlier in the week. Genius was just the prologue. So the Genius Bill was the bill the United States passed, basically passing regulations on stable coins, normalizing them, integrating them into our financial system. And they're saying this is prologue, meaning this is the beginning of the book. This is the part before chapter 1. That's how early we are in this process. So if you think about it in terms of adoption, if we're at prologue, we're not even at chapter 1 yet. So, and I believe that that's true. Now, obviously, we've come a long way. The Bitcoin ETFs were a game changer. We saw that. It took Bitcoin to another level, but I think there's more levels of adoption. If George were here, he would be talking about the fact that at some point, the United States is going to add Bitcoin to its strategic reserve. When that happens, I think you're going to see markets move like crazy. So that's a catalyst that waits out there. A lot of catalysts are occurring every single week. And, you know, according to this article, the Genius Act was only the beginning. Stablecoins represent a platform shift into payments. The stage is set. Let me get to another one. Okay, just as far as adoption goes, investment platform Webull brings back crypto trading. The service supports trading in over 50 tokens, including Bitcoin, Ether, and Solana, and obviously 47 others. Webull is reintroduced crypto trading for the US users. So this is a big piece of adoption, right? Webull has a lot of customers. They took this away and they're bringing it back. You used to have to jump through some hoops to do this, and now you're just going to straight up be able to trade it like your stocks or options or whatever else, just like you used to be able to. So again, adoption. This is all about adoption. Every piece by piece by piece, there's tens of thousands of little pieces of adoption that are going to occur, all of which are catalysts. Okay, this came out yesterday. The United States government starts pushing economic data onto blockchains as a proof of concept. So again, adoption. The U.S. Department of Commerce said it issued its gross domestic product data via 9 blockchains, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other crypto world pathways. The U.S. Department of Commerce is testing the waters for the release of major federal economic data through blockchains, releasing its gross domestic product numbers via 9 of them on Thursday. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick praised President Donald Trump's leadership on the technology and said this move should help cement the U.S. as the global leader. So for those of you wondering, this administration is all in on Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and a lot of this push. The underlying thing that you're never going to hear anybody talk about anymore, but what changed this administration's mind is they do not want the Federal Reserve to make a CBDC. They don't want a digital dollar. They see that as a bad thing. They see that as a step too far, an invasion of privacy. And the best way to prevent that is by creating framework like the Genius Act to incentivize everybody to just peg their stablecoin to the dollar. So it leaves it decentralized. It's pegged to the US dollar under certain rules. So, you know, the dollar doesn't lose its prominence, but it becomes the interface with the entire crypto universe. So that's the path they're taking, and they seem to be very serious about it. And that's why I expect, it's my opinion, we will get a purchase of Bitcoin between now and the end of the year, in my opinion, by the federal government. So that has not happened yet. No one's really even talking out loud about it, but I think that's coming at us. And Gary's asking, how will CleanSpark build HPC and AI with no at-the-market offering? So that's another thing that CleanSpark's not getting any credit for. They've gone all year. They've gone since last November without diluting their stock. No at-the-market offerings. That was the #1 complaint by a mile, that these companies were diluting themselves like crazy. Well, CleanSpark took that to absolute zero. I suspect they will actually do some preferred debt or maybe a straight loan collateralized by their Bitcoin. That's what I believe. I think the Bitcoin mining industry, that as it integrates with the high performance computing industry, is shifting towards convertible debt or just straight up debt, which I prefer, as long as it's a means to an end to create a second line of revenue. And I think it will be very, very helpful to the stock. Gary said it took Wolf 5 months to write a deal, and they had the best site near New York. CleanSpark will need to go through big losses over the next 6 months to possible win. So they're late to the game, that's for sure. And everybody's come in at different stages. And, you know, Bitfarms was late, but they're all in now. And CleanSpark was the last one in. I guess Hut was really, well, Core Scientific was the first one, and they got the first contract. Hut 8 fundamentally shifted who they were when they did their merger of equals. And it was clear and it was obvious that Bitcoin mining was no longer of interest to them, and they were going to become an energy company. Bit Digital abandoned Bitcoin mining completely. They're now an Ethereum treasury company. So Terowolf has allocated the vast majority of its resources to high performance computing. IREN is allocating 100% of its cash flow from its Bitcoin mining operations to growing its high performance computing. So you can see this industry, Bitcoin miners are leaning into this in a big way, and CleanSpark is going to have to move fast, and they're going to have to be loud about it to get heard. And you're right, they're probably not getting the next contract. But if they do need to start taking steps to show that here's the path, here's the pathway, and the path is clear. And in the meantime, remain, you know, a dominant Bitcoin miner. So I think they can accomplish that. We're at 89 likes, guys. We need 90 likes. 10 more likes gets us to our 100. We're striving for that. I think we have now missed that a total of 3 times over 4 years. Let's not add today as the 4th time. Do us a favor, help us out. All right, let me get to some other. We got a lot of other stuff here. Got one more that's right on this topic though that I want to move to. And give me just a second. A lot of tabs open. Well, let's just look at this one while we're passing by. Gemini targets XRP. So for those of you who don't know, George holds an enormous amount of XRP. I have some XRP. It's the only altcoin that I own. And we've been talking about XRP for over 3 years on the channel. And XRP is experiencing adoption. So I like to just bring these out and let everybody know. Gemini targets XRP army with new credit card. Expands Ripple USD use for US customers. So this is some more adoption for XRP. So it's not just Bitcoin that's getting adoption. There are some coins that will win. I think it's going to be a very small handful of coins, right? There's tens of thousands of coins, and if you count it in some ways, there's, you know, millions of them. Most of them are of no value, but I think there's a handful of blockchains where there's real technology that's applicable that is going to get adoption. And XRP seems to be one of them that's leading the way, in my opinion. And it's down a bunch right now. Okay, so this is talking about the Bitcoin volatility has plummeted. So if for those of you who were here earlier, I was talking, wow, thank you everybody. We quickly got to 101 likes. Mission accomplished, much appreciated. Thank you very much for the likes. Appreciate the help. Bitcoin undervalued versus gold as volatility collapses. This from JP Morgan. So JP Morgan was infamously not exactly a big fan of Bitcoin for a long time, but they seem to be reporting a lot more fairly on it lately. Maybe they've bought enough that, you know, the skeptic in me says that they can start talking nicely about it. Bitcoin volatility has plummeted from around 60% at the beginning of the year to a current record low of 30%, the report says. So this is what I was getting at. This is why I don't think we're going to see crypto winters. The volatility's cut in half this year. JP Morgan says Bitcoin looks undervalued when compared to gold. Corporate treasuries now hold over 6% of the cryptocurrency supply, with index inclusion fueling passive inflows and further dampening volatility, the report says. So as this gets institutionalized, you know, there will be more Bitcoin bought, not only in the ETFs, but in the Bitcoin treasury companies. And obviously the biggest one of them all is Strategy, formerly Microstrategy, and they're now in the S&P 500. So every index, every ETF that tries to mirror the S&P 500 has to buy shares of MicroStrategy. So, you know, that's a means for their stock to increase, and they continue to do. Well, I'll go show you this week's news. MicroStrategy adds 3,081 Bitcoin, bringing their stack to nearly 632.5 thousand Bitcoin. So last week's purchases were at $115,000 on average. So we're off of that a little bit right now, and that's the way it goes. But that's another 3,000 tokens to bring it up to, 632,000 tokens. This is monstrous. So you've got, 600,000 tokens here. I think BlackRock alone has, a similar amount of Bitcoin. Those are just two entities. So the adoption is real, and we're still way early. And that's why I do think, I don't have these open this week, but last week we looked at 3 or 4 different very prominent people calling for Bitcoin $1 million. Now, they weren't calling for that, in 2025, but they were calling for it in 2028 or 2029, and that's not very far from now. And, if we go from the 108 we're trading at right now to $1 million in the next 2 or 3 or even 4 years, that Bitcoin will remain, one of the best performing assets in the history of the world. So, and I think there's a good chance of that. Obviously, so does Michael Saylor. He keeps buying it. Now, I will say MicroStrategy has struggled greatly in recent months. But prior to that, they outperformed every Bitcoin miner substantially. So the field is evening out a little bit. The Bitcoin miners are running way ahead over the last 4 months. And in fact, I'll go to my little trade that I made that kind of highlights this. So on April 23rd, my MicroStrategy got back to break even. So I had been saying when I get back to zero, I'm selling this and buying Bitcoin miners. So you could see if I had held my MicroStrategy and done nothing, I would be down 4.4% today, 128 days later. But instead, I bought a bunch of IREN, a bunch of Hive, and a little bit of Riot. Well, Riot's up 80% since I bought it. Hive's up 72.5% since I bought it. And IREN's up 329% since I bought it. So I am now up 212% instead of being down 4%. That's what one trade can do for your portfolio. And I very rarely make trades, which is why I'm tracking this one. I'm mostly a buy and hold, but it seemed crystal clear to me a few things. One, that April was a bottom, and two, that it seemed like these treasury companies were getting out ahead of themselves. They had run so far ahead of the field that I thought there would be an opportunity to see some pullback there as the Bitcoin miners ran. And it's worked out, fortunately for me, this one has worked out exactly the best I could have possibly hoped. In fact, better than I could have possibly hoped. So we'll see how this goes over time. I don't think that this is necessarily going to be true forever. It's just MicroStrategy. If we go to the MicroStrategy stock, so if you take a look at this, here's why I felt there was room. This is January. This is February of 2024. So even if I go from here to the peak, that's up almost 1,000%. If I go to, I sold it on the 23rd, that's up 620%. In a period of time where most of the Bitcoin miners in this exact window of time were in the red. And MicroStrategy was up 600%. So I just felt like, we were going to get a period of the reverse type of action. It won't last forever, I don't think, but, sometimes you get lucky on timing. So MicroStrategy, for those of you thinking, well, it's not doing well, it's still up 547% since January of 2024. So in a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half, it's up over 500%. This is still, even with the pullback, this is still phenomenal performance. But conversely, if you go to IREN, this went parabolic. You talk about nothing goes up in a straight line, but like this kind of went up in a straight line and then it went up in a straight line. So these things run. And again, we did this earlier in the stream, in a period I'll go from April 16th to the peak of today is 477%. The close of today, it's 416%. So IREN's up over 400% since the middle of April. And there's every reason to believe, as you can see, it tested its all-time high. I think it has room to run. Two different companies just came out and dramatically raised their price target, one to $37, one to $41. This thing's at $26 right now, which means there's still potentially a lot of room to go. We'll see what happens. Oh, just as an aside, I'm going to call this a cautionary tale, and I just bring it up to remind everybody because I do think right now, and I don't think it's over, we are in an AI bubble. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, meaning they're going to go up. The bubble's going to get bigger before it breaks. Everybody is 100% convinced that AI is going to change the world. And the thing is, we seem to have short-term memories because this is like the fifth thing in the last 5 years that changes everything. Everything that comes before it doesn't matter anymore. It's a new world. And one of those recent things, if you remember Facebook, they literally changed their name, and Mark Zuckerberg did some very bizarre, you can go watch it, some very bizarre hour-long video on what the future was going to be like. And it was going to be in the magical meta world. And they changed their name from Facebook to Meta because the metaverse was everything. Well, here we go. Some of you may remember the Sandbox. This was on fire at the peak of the metaverse hype. The Sandbox cuts half of its staff, restructures. Metaverse platform, the Sandbox, is cutting more than half of its staff and closing offices worldwide. You're going to be shocked at these numbers if you followed this at all. So they have 250 employees. Well, guess what? Let me find it. The Sandbox has seen its daily active users dwindle to just a few hundred. They have more employees than they have users. This is dead. They don't need to switch who's in charge of it. They need to shut it down. Give the other 125 people you didn't lay off, do them a favor. Let them go wherever they're going to go next, because the metaverse is gone. There is no metaverse. So if my poll wasn't broken, I would do a poll right now. But I called this at the time. This seemed like absolute madness and insanity. And yes, we're integrating computers into our lives more and more and more. But we are not putting goggles on and sitting in a chair for the rest of our lives and interacting at a fake office in the metaverse. There were people spending $10 or $20 million for beachfront property in the metaverse. Guess how much beachfront property there is in the metaverse? Infinity, because it's made up. So people got convinced to pay $10 million for beachfront property. It was crazy. So that's the peak of a bubble, right? That probably marked the top. We're nowhere near that yet for AI. In fact, I suspect we're going to go on for a year or more building this bubble. And I'm not comparing AI to the metaverse. These large language models are game changers. They're going to be integrated into every business. They're going to be used dramatically, and they will have a very big impact versus the metaverse, which I think people will just laugh at if anybody remembers it at all. But I do think the hype is at a level that's wild at this point. Oh, Dave is saying Synchronicity, a metaverse film. I remember that. Bruce Willis. I remember, if those are the same movies, I remember the Bruce Willis movie where his body was useless and he went out into the fake world with. So anyway, that was a long time ago. So Will is saying he thinks ETH is the best cryptocurrency out there. So there's a lot of momentum around Ethereum right now. It's already had a huge run off of its bottom, off of its lows. Just going to get to a few because there's a few in every group. I'm going to get to some FUD. And this seems to be, out of everything we just looked at, somehow these articles tend to spread faster. Bitcoin hammered below 109K as conference indicator strikes again. So it's kind of an annual thing that there's hype leading up to the Bitcoin conference. And then once the conference happens, Bitcoin performs poorly during and immediately after. Well, they're now doing a Bitcoin conference in Asia. And the same phenomenon seems to be happening. Bitcoin has shown a clear pattern of poor price performance around Bitcoin Magazine's US-based Bitcoin conference. Similar action is being seen around the group's Bitcoin Asia conference this week. Bitcoin has tumbled to its lowest level since July at $108,400. So I don't know if these are correlated. It does seem every year around the Bitcoin conference, if you sold Bitcoin the day before it started and bought it the day after it ended, you'd have won every single year. And now we've had a similar phenomenon. I don't know if these are related in any way. I think it has a lot more to do. I think this recent pullback has a lot more to do with just fear and unreasonable panic surrounding inflation that I don't want to be dismissive, but we've been at a normal level of inflation for almost 2 years now. At some point, you got to admit, like, anything can happen, but, you know, we're here. Then we have this. Bitcoin may have topped, warns a key indicator, but flows continue to lean bullish. So they're hedging their bets on both sides. They're looking at the 1 month RSI and showing a bearish divergence. I put very little stock into this. Just my opinion. That's one of a million indicators. The monthly, and I'm going to go show you what it looks like because there's a flip side to this argument. Okay, so here's 1 month. And I'll draw the lines in. So you'll see we've had higher highs in Bitcoin on the monthly time frame. And at the same time, spread this out so it becomes more obvious. We've had lower highs in the RSI. So that is considered bearish. That is a bearish divergence. That's usually an indicator that bearish activity is ahead. But I'm not looking at this chart this way. Here's how I'm looking at this. In the 2017 bull run, the monthly RSI got up to 96. That was the peak of the bull run 2 bull runs ago. In the last bull run, the RSI got up to almost 92. We've now kind of been floating. We got up to 75, then we got up to 75 again, then we got up to 75 again. We just recently got up to 73. I don't think any of this action has anything to do with marking a top. Oh, it's doing that. Second, 2. Right, the top in these was crystal clear. And we're not anywhere near them. So yes, is there a very small bearish divergence on the 1 month time frame? If you want to look at it that way, you can look at it that way. I'm looking at it in previous bull markets. We tend to get between 93 and 95 on the monthly RSI before the bull market is over. And we haven't gotten within 20 points of that. So to me, that's why I think we're looking at an extended bull market, a lot longer than the normal 4-year market, but that means there's a lot more room left ahead. That's my opinion. So you can look at this chart in different ways depending on how you choose to see it. But that's what they're talking about. And I don't put a lot of stock in any one indicator, regardless of which one it is. So let's go. No, we don't care about that. I want to go look at, I want to finish up by looking at year to date. So we are now through 8 months of the year for the Bitcoin miners. This is what their performance has been year to date. And I'm going to show you another chart and then come back to this chart. Because you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Bitcoin miners are green. Marathon's down 5%. Bitfarms is down 10%. If I go back in time to when we called the low on this channel, on our members only live stream, we said, it's probably the second time in my life I've called a low, because it's usually a foolish thing to do. But the convergence of what was going on seemed to be so obvious, it's like they were pounding us over the head with it. So if you go back to April 4th, this is what the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners looked like year to date. Bitcoin down 10% on the year. All of the Bitcoin miners totally decimated. Right? Cleanspark was in the lead, down 20%. That felt good. Look at all these down 48, 49, 51, 54, 55, 63%. Everything red. We now, from this, it's now 4 months later, and we now have, instead of 100% red, and every Bitcoin miner anywhere from 2 times to 6 times worse performance than Bitcoin, we now live in this world. Bitcoin's up 16% on the year. IREN's up 170% on the year. That's more than 10xing Bitcoin's performance this year. Terowolf's up 67% versus Bitcoin's 16%. CIFR, 65% versus Bitcoin's 16%. RIOT is up double Bitcoin's performance on the year. RIOT, which is one of the stocks that people usually rail against, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of retail sentiment, but institutions are buying RIOT. They're up 35% instead of being massively in the red. HUT is up 30%, and then you'll see we've recently had Core Scientific, CleanSpark, and Hive all go green on the year. Remember, those were, CleanSpark was down 20%, Hive was down almost 50% on the chart we just looked at. Bitfarms was down 50%. Now it's down 10%. And so we could be 1 week away from every single company being green except BitDR. And so this is a chart that starts to look good. The rest of the year is to come. We're going to see. That's going to decide how the year ends up, because we were 3.25 months into the year. This year looked like it was an absolute disaster. We're now 8 months into the year, and I think this looks very promising. I think there's a lot more good price action ahead. That's my opinion, of course. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. I want to thank everybody for joining the show, whether you're watching us live or whether you tune in later. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thank you to all the members who continue to support the show. And thank you to all the subscribers. So everybody have a great weekend. And to the members, we will see you next Tuesday after the market closes.